Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I'm not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video, but we're going to talk about the continued implosion of streaming in Hollywood. Hollywood was betting on streaming to save their asses, and everything is falling apart. Netflix leading the charge, I guess. This came in from the Hollywood Reporter this morning. That there's a huge wake-up call for Netflix and a huge wake-up call for Hollywood, and we're going to talk about this and how David Zaslav, particularly at Warner Brothers, is coming in and gutting divisions that do not perform. He's merciless. He is firing people left and right. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe Rooster Teeth is headed for a shutdown or a sale. For sure, because they don't perform, they don't bring anything to the table. But this is just the beginning, guys. We're going to see a consolidation of, streaming services. This is going to be Highlander. It's going to be Hollywood Highlander. So we're gonna talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 265,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. We do talk a lot about pop culture and the streaming wars, and we've been following the situation with David Zaslav, who just bought a whole bunch of Warner stock, by the way. Warner Discovery stock. He's the new CEO. Everybody was like, oh, this is great. He's going to come in and things are going to be great at Warner. And it's like, no. Everything we heard, and we have insiders at Warner, everything we heard before he came in from Discovery was that he was going to gut the place. And it's been merciless. He's lying to people's faces, basically. Well, not lying to them, but getting them to feel secure in their positions and then yanking the rug out from underneath them. And this happened with CNN. He went in and had a talk with CNN anchors, and everything's good. It's all good, guys. He's like the two Bobs from Office Space. He's like, everything's good, guys. It's fine. Everything's fine here. And then he shut down CNN Plus almost immediately. We got news the other day that Warner Brothers is going to stop making new shows for TNT and TBS. They're pulling the plug completely. Like, they put all this money into these shows, and David Zaslav came in and said, yep, we're getting rid of CNN. We're going to stop making new shows for TNN and TBS. So these are like, dead franchises at this point, or dead channels. If they're not going to make new shows, it's just going to be reruns. It's going to be like when TBS first started, when I first started watching TBS. It was like just reruns of like where they have Good Times and Sanford and Son and What's Happening, I think, was on, and lots of just 70s sitcoms and stuff like that. And that's what ran mostly on TBS back in the day. And I gotta wonder if that's what's going to happen again. It's just going to be reruns until they shut it down. Who the hell knows? But yeah, this came in today from the Hollywood Reporter. People are getting fired from MGM. Michael DeLuca, MGM's Motion Picture Group chairman, and Pam Abdi, MGM's Motion Picture Group president, are both exiting their roles. We know that at Warner Media, they got rid of Ann Sarnoff, which I was very surprised, about that. Now, the main article in question here was Netflix's big wake-up call, the power clash behind the crash. So they're playing the blame game, and they're like, who is to blame for Netflix failing? So talking about the Schadenfreude, they said in the case of Netflix's ongoing debacle, the streamer's competitors acknowledge their damage themselves by the sudden discovery that maybe the sky is not the limit when it comes to streaming, but they're relishing the bad news anyway. Yeah, they're like, oh, poor Netflix, poor you. But the thing is Disney stock has suffered too for a number of reasons. The other streaming services are not doing that well. David Zaslav is gutting Warner. A top executive at one of Netflix's legacy studio rivals. The news has dinged valuations and been bad for business, but it sure effing feels good. This executive rattles off a brief history of Netflix in Hollywood, including the A word that arises in almost every conversation about the streamer. The entire town's rooting against them. It's not just the arrogance of announcing that you're the leaders not respecting executive contracts and poaching everybody the way that they carry themselves. There's a feeling of anger, then despair, or our business is over. Yeah, because basically Netflix, peddled everybody else's wares. They were a middleman. They were a way to rent movies online, and then eventually they started streaming other people's content, and then they were like, we'll just make the content ourselves. And then they basically went to war with Hollywood, and Hollywood is kind of rooting for their failure, but they also put all their eggs into Netflix's basket too. Those studios get to feel a little sexy again. Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav made it clear on April 26th. They're a far more balanced and competitive company now because they're cutting people. Cable networks may be on the decline, but they still generate a lot of revenue. Maybe try keeping the lights on. Maybe don't kill theatrical so fast. Netflix's competitors still have room to grow. Disney in particular has committed to growing a lot. Good luck with that. Agents and creators believe they're seeing the end of the spending spree that has lined many pockets in recent years. Asked if the content bubble has burst, Grace and Frankie creator Marta Kaufman, a unicorn who got to a Guinness Book-worthy 94 episodes of a scripted show on Netflix, said yes. Yes, the spending spree is over. Top exec at a legacy company that's poured resources into streaming suggests that may be so. We'd all be insane not to give the spend a hard look. Agents are flipped out more than anybody. They're taking it hard. Yeah, because everybody's like, oh, hey, we'll just go get a Netflix deal. They'll greenlight anything. Netflix will greenlight anything. And in particular, animation is going to be very hard hit because Netflix actually has pulled so many top shelf talent from animation. Others they weren't so top shelf. There was more of the scratch and dent cart, I guess, at the back of the supermarket. But no, they pulled a lot of top talent from Disney and DreamWorks and elsewhere to work for them, and now they're shutting all this shit down because they can't afford it. Netflix's rough ride is truly a measure of the limits on subscriber growth. I think it is. I think we've hit a ceiling. Wall Street thinks it is. At a time of war in Europe and rising inflation, it may be a little too soon to write an obituary. Netflix has gotten itself out of tight spots before. While they have to make good content, they have to stop being woke, right? I mean, because a lot of people aren't watching their shows because they're like, what the fuck is going on here? They are probably the poster child for mandates in action. Like you can see a Netflix adaptation and be like, oh, okay, this is where the mandates kicked in because, we have to make sure we have like one kind of every kind of potential person in an adaptation of a book or a comic book that wasn't there before. Go see Sandman, see, some of these other adaptations, and people are like, why is Death black again when she was always a gothy, pasty white girl? What's going on here? So now it's a blame game. They said they see a link between Netflix's problems and the 2020 fall of Cindy Holland, who played a key role in launching the service's originals, House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, and Stranger Things. These sources say Holland was the one who nurtured strong relationships with talent. Important multi-hyphenates who work or have worked with Netflix say it was Holland rather than Ted Sarandos, the then chief content officer who gave Netflix its profile as a home to buzzy quality shows. Yeah, Netflix used to do fewer shows, but they were higher quality shows and they lasted longer. It was Holland who warned Sarandos to no avail that continuing to order specials from Dave Chappelle would lead to internal strife and bad press. Oh boy. Okay, so yeah, if you hadn't done more Dave Chappelle specials, Ted, maybe our stock wouldn't have dropped. The service was built on the back of Cindy Holland's taste. They talk about the Walmartization of the streamer, that they basically would greenlight anything. There was a show rejected by the CW and Netflix picked it up. I mean, there's a running joke that like anybody can get anything greenlit at Netflix, and they're saying that's basically what happened. It's called Insatiable Gate at Netflix, this source says. It gave the power of greenlight to several people. It caused absolute demoralization and chaos. Everybody thought it was a terrible thing that Ted did, allowing one team to greenlight something that another team had passed on. So Netflix would like greenlight anything. The show was critically panned. It performed well enough to get a second season. It sent a message to Ted because it did okay numbers. Ted, wanting to increase content by a huge amount, started to look to Bella as to what the company should be. So yeah, they're basically like, they're playing the blame game here. They're like, they started greenlighting anything if they just kept that one person there that greenlit Stranger Things. Sources say some Netflix execs began to worry about the burgeoning number of shows. It was, hey guys, do we think this is enough? Because we're cannibalizing our own shit. That's true. There's too much to watch on Netflix. And this is why it's just numbers now. Then there was Holland's concern about the lack of curation and quality control. Important creative talent who had success working with Holland muses. I wonder if, say, a Bonobo throwing shit at a whiteboard full of titles as a method of deciding what projects to make would have more or less success than all of these other deciders who think they know what people want or don't want. God. Prominent creative who was squarely on Team Holland says they pitted Bella and Cindy against each other. People would always say they didn't know who to go to the pitch, and Ted loved that stupid phrase. There are multiple paths to yes. All paths lead to yes. One of Holland's past projects for Netflix was The Queen's Gambit, an expensive period piece that sources say was mocked as Holland's folly by some in-house. According to sources, Barahia and her staff were dismissive and even unpleasant to the team that worked on. So they're fighting amongst themselves. They're fighting amongst themselves at Netflix. So they went from being really picky about what they greenlit to panicking because all of their bread and butter shows were going to other streaming services, to giving greenlight powers to everybody, to now they're all fighting amongst themselves because one person's picking up a show the other person doesn't approve of, and then they're all fighting over the numbers. Holy shit. So the rumor mill is now spinning furiously about what Netflix will do to address the issues. Which heads will roll? Is it possible Hastings will sell Netflix? Will the streamer drop its binge strategy? Can its ad-supported option work? What about games? Oh my God. Despite the questions, the chief of a rival company says the streamer is still a behemoth. Well, it is. I don't think Netflix is Blockbuster. No, they killed Blockbuster. I think it's here to stay, but the idea they could spend their way to world domination is over. So Netflix's best days are probably behind it. There's too much competition, and they got stupid, just spending. And this explains so much. I mean, it's explained so much. I mean, of course, what actually went wrong at Netflix, that's going to depend on who you talk to. But, I definitely think some heads are going to roll. I think things are going to change. I mean, unfortunately, again, as a fan of animation, it's a bummer because Netflix has, it's put out some pretty good stuff. I mean, it really has. I mean, there's a lot of dog shit on Netflix, but some of my favorite animated shows of the last, couple of years, and my favorite animated movie of the last couple of years, which has been Klaus, we're on Netflix, and they're definitely cutting back on that. It's a damn shame. But back to Warner now. I think Zaslav is probably going to look at if you're complaining, you're gone. You don't need to be here. So just one more thing here on, speaking of animation, speaking of Warner, speaking of all this, Rooster Teeth. I actually thought for sure that if anybody was going to buy Rooster Teeth, it'd be like Crunchyroll or it would be Netflix, and obviously they're not in a position to do that. They've been wanting to sell Rooster Teeth for a couple of years now because they bring no value, and I think this might be it. I think Zaslav, while he's purging content, this might be the kill shot. And if they were going to jump to Netflix, which I kind of wondered about because they were doing Transformers and some other stuff for Netflix, I don't think it's going to happen. The original plan, as I understand it from the Warner Brothers insiders we had at the time, was that Rooster Teeth and Crunchyroll would have just gotten rolled into HBO Max, and then they found a buyer for Crunchyroll. But either way, things weren't going to stay the same. And I think this might be it for Rooster Teeth too. I don't know. We'll see. But pretty interesting that it's all collapsing. It's all collapsing. And Hollywood seems delighted that Netflix is collapsing. Apparently, Hollywood has had a very strained relationship with them. I don't think that it's going to be much better over on the Warner side of things because David Zaslav is not Hollywood's friend either, but pretty interesting stuff. I'm going to wrap this up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.